Hello and welcome to the second session on Indian foreign policy. In this class, we are going to discuss about the features of Indian foreign policy. So we know foreign policy is one of the very important tool of the international relationships. So the international relationships are like the relationships between one country and another country. Normally, they are articulated and they are manifested through the foreign policy. So we can consider the foreign policy is like a wheel with which the process of the international relationships operates. So foreign policy, if you have to take the meaning of foreign policy, so foreign policy is a framework within which the government of a given country conducts its relationships with outside world in different formats, that is bilateral, regional, multilateral or global. So foreign policy is nothing but it is a set of ideas. It is a set of rules, or else it is a set of framework within which a government operates in maintaining the relationships with other countries. Now we also know that a country, when it is framing its foreign policy, the one thing that every country gives importance is the national interest. So the national interest of a particular country plays a very important role in framing the foreign policy of a country. So we can say almost all the states they determine the course of their foreign policy within the limits of their strengths and also the realities of the external environment. So when a country, when a state is formulating its foreign policy, first of all, it looks into the domestic strengths and weaknesses of that particular country. And not only that, the external factors also play a very important role in formulating the foreign policy. Now coming to before discussing about what are the basic features of Indian foreign policy. So first of all, we have to know what are the objectives of the Indian foreign policy. What made the Indian leaders to adopt a particular kind of foreign policy? What were the goals and objectives which were there in front of India? So, if we see the goals and objectives of foreign policy of any country, the first goal that we can say is to protect the country from traditional and non-traditional threats. So, this is the first goal of Indian foreign policy. That is to protect India from the traditional and the non-traditional threats. So, it also includes defense, it includes the economic security of the country, it includes the energy security of the country, it includes the financial security of the country. So, it protection of a country, it includes all sorts of protections that the government has to look into. So, the first goal of Indian foreign policy is to protect India from traditional and non-traditional threats, and the second one is to create an external environment which is conducive for an inclusive development of India so that the benefits of growth can reach the poorest of poor within the country. So, the foreign policy measures which are taken up by the government, they should be in such a way that they have to benefit the people, the economic development of the people within the country. And the third goal of Indian foreign policy is to ensure that Indian voice is heard on global forums on issues of global dimensions, such as we can take terrorism or global warming or climate change or environment, disarmament or bringing a reformation in the institutions of global governance like United Nations organizations. So, this is the third goal of Indian foreign policy. And the fourth one is to protect the Indian diaspora. That is the Indian society who are living in other countries. So, to protect the Indian diaspora and also not only protecting them, to utilize that diaspora for the development of the country. So, like this, we can divide these are the four goals and objectives of Indian foreign policy. And now coming to the stages of Indian foreign policy. That is, how the foreign policy has evolved in India. We can divide it into three phases. The initial phase it begins shortly after independence and lasted up to 1962, from 1947 to 1962, wherein in 1962 we have to face a war with China. So this war has brought a paradigm shift in Indian foreign policy. It made India to rethink about its military preparedness. So the second phase is from 1962 to 1991, and 1991 is very important in history of India from global perspective and also the domestic perspective. From global perspective, we know in 1991 the Cold War has come to an end. The Cold War has come to an end because of the sudden collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. So till that time, there used to be the Cold War situation, condition that was prevailing between two power blocks, the NATO military bloc, which was led by America, and Warsaw Pact, which was led by Soviet Russia. So in 1991, after the demise of the Soviet Russia, now the bipolar world has come to an end. From there, we see the emergence of the unipolar world and America becoming the world hegemon. So, with this, we can say a paradigm shift has taken place even in Indian foreign policy. And during the same time in India, the new economic policy was adopted and India was incorporated into the global economy. In new economic policy, we have taken up the issues, the policies like globalization, privatization, and liberalization. So 1991, it marks a very important shift in Indian foreign policy because of our domestic implications and also the external change which has come in the international arena. And the third phase, it begins from 1991 and it continues to the present day. Now, coming to the basic principles of Indian foreign policy are, number one is the Panchashil principles, and the second one is the policy of non-alignment. The third one is resistance to colonialism, imperialism, and racism. And the fourth one is peaceful settlement of international disputes. And the fifth one is support to United Nations organizations, international law, and just and equal world order. So these are the basic principles of Indian foreign policy. Now coming to the first principle, that is the Panchashil principle. We know Jawaharlal Nehru is considered as the architect of Indian foreign policy. So when India got independence, the biggest problem that India was facing was the economic development of the country, because India was under the control of the British rule for more than 250 years. And not only that, most of the Asian countries also, they were under the control of colonial rule, and all those countries gained independence. So the basic idea of Jawaharlal Nehru was, if these Asian countries they indulge in war, then what happens is it hampers the economic development of all the countries. If at all, instead, there is a mutual, cordial relationship among the Asian countries, then that helps in the mutual development of all the Asian countries. So, with this intention, Jawaharlal Nehru has come out with the Panchashil principles. That is, Panchashil principles are nothing but they are the 5 principles that have to be maintained by the different countries to maintain the international peace. So between India and China, there was an agreement on these Panchashil principles in the year 1954. Now coming to what are these Panchashil principles are. The first one is mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. That is, each country has to respect the territorial sovereignty and integrity of other country. Otherwise, that leads to war. And the second principle also is related to the first one, and that is non-aggression against each other. So, like if we take Sino-India War, the war between India and China in 1962, it has erupted. It's only because of China violating this principle. That is, China failed to respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of India, and China started extending its influence into Indian territory of Ladakh area up to Aksai Chin province, and that ultimately led to an escalation between India and China, and ultimately it led to war. So the first Panchashila principle is the mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and the second one is non-aggression against each other. And the third one is non-interference in each other's internal affairs. So no country has to interfere in the internal affairs of other countries. Why? Because that leads into the escalation of war. Now, many wars situations that America is facing nowadays is because we find American influence in many countries. Its influence still continuing in countries like Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Iraq. So because of that, we find because of involvement of America in other countries, that is resulting into the war like situation to America. And the third feature of Panchashil principle is non-interference in each other's internal affairs, and the fourth one is equality and mutual benefit, and the fifth one is peaceful coexistence. That is, any dispute between one country and another country, that dispute has to be solved through peaceful methods and with the help of dialogue. So these are the five principles which have been postulated by Jawaharlal Nehru. But though India and China, they made an agreement on Panchashil principles in 1954, we know China has violated these Panchashil principles, this agreement, and that led to a war between India and China in 1962. Now, coming to another very important feature of Indian foreign policy is it is the non-alignment movement. So, this is considered as the pivot of Indian foreign policy, and this particular policy of India has not only influenced our own Asian countries, but it also has influenced the world politics. So what is non-alignment and what made India into adopt this particular policies? We know before the Second World War, we can say Second World War has completely changed the economy, changed the power scenario of the world. So before Second World War, most of the European countries, they used to be considered as a superpowers. Like it could be Germany, France, or Italy, or Russia, or even Asian country Japan. All these countries used to be considered as the superpowers. But the Second World War has completely changed the scenario of the world, and the result of the Second World War is only the two countries have emerged as the superpowers. Number one is United States of America, and the second one is Soviet Russia. So there are many reasons why the enmity has developed between America and Soviet Russia. So one here we can discuss is the ideological differences. So America, it had belief, or else it has adopted the capitalistic form of economy, the free market system, and also the democratic form of government is adopted by America. But whereas Soviet Russia, it had belief in communistic form of economy. So because of that, there was a rift between America and Soviet relationships, though together they fought the Second World War. And because of this, Cold War situation between America and Soviet Russia, two military blocs have come into existence. One is NATO under the leadership of America, and the second one was the Warsaw Pact under the Soviet Russia, Soviet Union. So, when India got independence in 1947, this was the world scenario. That is, the world was completely divided into two power blocks, two military blocks. And America had an intention that India would join into American bloc, and even Russia had a hope that India would join into the Soviet Russian bloc. But when India got independence, at the same time, Pakistan also has got independence, and Pakistan immediately has joined into the American bloc. Now, when India has to take the decision, now instead of joining into American bloc or the Soviet Russian bloc, India wanted to have its own independent posture in international relationships. So, because Indian domestic situation was such that in those days, because India was under the control of British for more than 250 years, the primary objective of India was the economic development of the country. So, for that reason, we cannot afford to welcome enmity with either America or the Soviet Union. So, there was the necessity of cooperation of both America and Soviet Union for the development of India. So, for that reason, India, instead of joining either into American bloc or Soviet Russian bloc, India wanted to take up a posture or take up a position of being or taking up an independent stand in international relations without joining into both the power blocks or military blocks. So, this is called as the non-alignment. So, non-alignment is not to join into any of the power blocks. Now, non-alignment, it cannot be confused. Sometimes this word non-alignment is confused with certain words like neutrality, non-involvement, and isolation. So, we cannot say when India has adopted a non-alignment policy, we cannot say India has adopted a neutral policy. India is not neutral, or India is not silent towards the international issues. India is positive and India is dynamic regarding the international issues. But of course, here for neutral countries, we can take few examples. A few countries have declared themselves as neutral. A neutral country is the one which does not actively participate in the international affairs. Like here we can take the example of Switzerland, Sweden, Vatican City, Ireland. All these countries are recognized as the neutral countries. But here when India is adopting a non-alignment posture, this cannot be confused with neutrality or non-involvement or isolation. So, non-alignment is a positive and a dynamic concept, and with this particular stand, India wants to be completely independent in the foreign affairs and in international affairs, and India wants to play a proactive role in achieving the international peace. So, this policy of non-alignment, the non-alignment movement has come into existence with the initiative that is taken by Jawaharlal Nehru, and not only by Jawaharlal Nehru, even certain world leaders like the president of Ghana, like Kwame Nkrumah, and Indonesian president Sukarno, and Egypt president Gamal Abdel Nasser, and also the Yugoslavian president Tito. So, all of them together have taken the initiative in coming out with the non-alignment movement. Now, the seeds of the non-alignment movement were sown in the first Asia-African conference, which was held under the initiative which was taken by India in the year 1955 in Bandung. This was attended by nearly 29 countries. Later, on the basis of agreement arrived in Bandung Conference, the first summit of non-alignment conference was held in Belgrade in the year 1961. So from then onwards, this non-alignment movement has been playing a very significant role in maintaining the international peace. And of course, in 1991, when the Cold War has come to an end, now there are debates regarding what is the relevance of non-alignment movement. But even after the end of the Cold War, still today, non-alignment movement is playing a very significant role. And the recent summit of non-alignment movement, that is the 8th summit of non-alignment movement, was held in October 25th and 26th of 2019 in Baku of Azerbaijan. This was attended by nearly 120 countries. So the contribution of non-alignment, we can say, is the significance of non-alignment movement is the first thing is after the United Nations organization, it is the non-alignment movement which has the maximum number of nations as its members. This is the biggest achievement of non-alignment movement. And the second achievement of non-alignment movement is here we can say the Third World War has still now did not erupt. It could be because of number of reasons, like the very important part which is played by United Nations organizations. But we can definitely say there is a very important role that is played by the non-alignment movement. These non-alignment countries have stood as a buffer between the two power blocks, and that has prevented the Third World War situation. So there were many instances where the Third World War would have erupted, like if you take the Cuban crisis or U-2 plane crisis, where the Third World War should have started. But till today, the Third World War did not take place. For that, to some extent, the credit can be given to the non-alignment movement. And the other achievements that we can credit to non-alignment movement is, as just now we have said, it has helped in easing of the tensions many times between USA and USSR. And even regarding the Suez Canal crisis in 1956, non-alignment movement always stood for justice. India always stood for the cause of justice. So Israel's aggression on Egypt regarding Suez Canal in 1956, this was opposed by India. And also the American attack on Iraq, this also was opposed by India and the non-alignment movement. And not only that, this non-alignment movement, one more achievement of non-alignment movement is it advocated creation of a new international economic order. And in fact, the first conference on trade and development held in 1964 was largely the result of the non-alignment movement. And not only that, if you take the example of Congo crisis of 1961, and also independence of Indonesia from Dutch. So regarding all these instances, we know India has played a very important role being a part of the non-alignment movement. And if you take the example of Indonesia, when Indonesia had a threat from Dutch, it was India which has airlifted the leaders of Indonesian Republic to the safest place. It was Biju Patnaik, the former Chief Minister of Orissa, who was then the Indian Army. He was then in the Indian Army and he was the pilot. It was Biju Patnaik who was the pilot who has taken the risk in airlifting the Prime Minister and Vice President of Indonesia to the safest place of Switzerland. So like that, we can say that India, being a part of non-alignment movement, had played a very significant role in maintaining the international peace and international order. Well, now coming to the relevance of non-alignment movement in the post-Cold War era, that is after the Cold War has come to an end in 1991, there are many who argue that what is the relevance of continuing non-alignment movement after the end of Cold War. But here, even the Cold War has come to an end. Still, even in the post-Cold War situation, we find the non-alignment movement still it has its own relevance. Why? Because when the Cold War situation was existing between America and Soviet Russia, there used to be a sort of the balance of power between the two power blocks. But once Soviet Union has got disintegrated and it has lost the superpower status, now the balance of power which used to exist between these two superpowers, and that balance of power is lost. So for that reason, to have a check over the government, check over America. Why? Because presently it is America which has emerged as the superpower, as the only superpower, as or it has emerged as a world hegemon. So for that reason, to have a check over domination of America, or else to have a check over the aggressive nature of America, non-alignment movement, still it has a very important role to play. And not only that, non-alignment movement, it's like a platform that brings about a dialogue between the developed countries and the developing countries, and not only that, a dialogue between the third world countries like the Asian countries, the African countries, and the Latin American countries. So for that reason, to promote a dialogue between the North and the South, that is the developed North and the developing South. So non-alignment movement, it's like a beautiful platform. And one more is to promote the South-South dialogue, that is to promote a cooperation between among the third world countries. So it is the non-alignment movement which has been like a platform in bringing the nations together. Now here, coming to the third feature of Indian foreign policy, is the policy of resisting colonialism, imperialism, and racism. So India, because it itself was under the control of colonial rule for more than 250 years, and India thinks that colonialism is nothing but, or imperialism is nothing but, it is the highest form of capitalism. So for that reason, colonialism or imperialism or even racism in any form, it is opposed by India. So while framing the foreign policy of India, one of the basic feature of foreign policy of India to oppose colonialism and imperialism wherever it is existing in the world. So for that reason, immediately after we got independence, India has taken the initiative to organize the Asian Relations Conference in India for the sake of independence of Indonesia. And as we have discussed just now, in helping Indonesia getting independence from Dutch after the Japanese have surrendered, India had played a very, very important role. And not only important role, India had played a risky role in helping Indonesia in getting independence. And not only Indonesia, India played a very important role on the platform of United Nations organizations and non-alignment movement and other international forums to see that those countries still suffering under colonialism, they get independence. And we can say because of the initiative that is taken up by India, nearly 14 of the African countries they have been liberated from the colonial rule in the year 1964. Like here we can take the examples of Algeria, Angola, Kenya, Madagascar, Mozambique, Namibia, Zimbabwe. All these countries they have got independence after 1964. And not only regarding these countries, even regarding Congo crisis in 1961, India has taken the initiative and it has sent the peacekeeping forces. And even in Korea also, Korean crisis also, India has played a very, very important role. So here, because India thinks that colonialism and imperialism are the major threats to international peace. So for that reason, all these measures are taken up by India in international forum against colonialism and imperialism. And besides colonialism and imperialism, one more policy of foreign policy of India is to oppose racism in any form. So racism, which was prevalent in countries like South Africa and Rhodesia. So India has discussed about all these issues on different platforms, and especially it was India which played a very important role to bring the issue of apartheid in United Nations organizations in 1946. And not only that, India has made sincere efforts to end apartheid in South Africa, and because of the initiative that is taken up by India, a non-alignment movement, NAM, has set up the African Fund, that is the Action for Resisting Imperialism, Colonialism and Apartheid in the year 1986. And not only establishing this particular fund, India also has contributed very generously to this particular fund, and India has fought against racism in South Africa till 1990 when apartheid has come to an end. Now here the next principle of Indian foreign policy is peaceful settlement of international disputes. So India gives so much of importance to this particular issue that this point is also incorporated in the Indian Constitution. So in part 4 of the Indian Constitution, that is in directive principles, article number 51, it mentions that India shall maintain the international peace and international security. So for that reason, right from the beginning, the basic principle of Indian foreign policy has been for the peaceful settlement of international disputes. So towards this end, we know India playing a very important role, many a times even cooperating with the United Nations organization in sending its peacekeeping forces, and also settling different issues like it could be the Korean conflict or Palestinian issue or Kashmir issue. So India always has adopted the peaceful methods, that is, it believed in the bilateral agreements, and it also had belief in solving the problems through the dialogues. So even if we take the Korean crisis of 1952, where India has played its part in solving the Korean crisis, though it was most of the time neglected. Recently, one writer by name Robert Barnes, in his research paper called Between the Blocks, India, United Nations and Ending the Korean Crisis. So in this particular paper, he mentions about the role that is played by India in solving the Korean crisis. And not only that, even if we take the present scenario, nowadays India is taking up different issues, like it is in favor of resolution of a peaceful settlement of even Iran nuclear issue. So like that, we can say that India has been playing a very important role in international arena in settling the international disputes through the peaceful methods. And the next feature of Indian foreign policy is support to the United Nations organizations, international law, and a just and equal world order. So, towards this end, also India has been playing a very, very important role. It could be disarmament policy, or it could be regarding global warming, or it could be regarding terrorism. So, India has been playing a very important role in discussing all these issues on the platform of United Nations organizations, and also in helping United Nations organizations in sending the peacekeeping forces to different parts of the world to help in establishing peace and security in different countries in the world. Now, here, if we take the statistics of India uh, cooperating with the United Nations organizations in sending the peacekeeping forces, here we can say that out of 71 peacekeeping missions which were sent by United Nations organizations, India has participated in 49 peacekeeping missions. So, in 49 instances, we can see that India has sent its peacekeeping forces. In 1962, the peacekeeping forces of India were sent to Congo, and in 2007, here India became the first country to deploy an all-women contingent to a united peacekeeping mission in Liberia. And we also know that India has sent the peacekeeping forces to Ethiopia and Eritrea, South Sudan, even Sri Lanka also. So there are even many other countries where India has sent its peacekeeping forces under the leadership of the United Nations organizations. And also regarding the disarmament also, India played a very, very important role in bringing the issues onto the platform of United Nations organizations. Like even Jawaharlal Nehru has seen that in the year 1954, a standstill agreement was brought onto the platform of United Nations organizations. And not only that, now when we talk about ultimately about the Indian foreign policy, now specifically if we take the non-alignment movement, so regarding the foreign policy of India, ultimately we can assess that India always was independent in framing or else in articulating its foreign policy. Like India was so independent in formulating its foreign policies was it started with non-alignment movement, and till now India has remained independent as it has had its own independent stand. Even if we take different nuclear agreements like the nuclear non-proliferation treaty of 1968. Regarding this nuclear non-proliferation treaty, because it was discriminatory in nature, India had its own stand of not being a part of nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and the same attitude India has shown regarding the CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty in 1996. So, because both these treaties were discriminatory in nature, because both these treaties were dividing the countries into two. One is nuclear haves and nuclear have-nots. So, in this manner, regarding the features of Indian foreign policy, we can say right from the days of the non-alignment to the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, India remained, we cannot say it is not a neutral state, but India had its own stand, and India played a very, very important role to be to itself and to have an independent stand of itself, and also to be dynamic in the international relations. Yeah, now coming to the new trends in Indian foreign policy, that is, we have seen that the third phase of Indian foreign policy, it starts from 1991, where the Cold War has come to an end. Now, after 1991, we know that the world scenario has completely changed. The Cold War has come to an end, and from a bipolar world, the unipolar world has emerged. And not only that, we have seen that besides America, there are many other countries which are becoming economically developed, like it could be China or South Korea or Japan, European Union, and even India. So for that reason, now the post Cold War era, uh, it has brought about the new challenges for India. So for that reason, in the post Cold War era, we see India from passive participation in international relations, international affairs, we find India playing a very proactive role. So coming to what are the paradigm changes that have come about in Indian foreign policy after 1991 are like here we can take the five heads. One is the neighborhood first, and the second one is proactive and national priority. Third one is integrated views of regions, and the fourth one is multiple relations simultaneously, and the fifth one is dehyphenation. So these are the new trends that we find in Indian foreign policy. Now coming to the neighborhood first. Now coming to this policy of neighborhood first, this was put forward by I.K. Gujral, and which is also called as the Gujral Doctrine. So where I.K. Gujral, when he has come out with this Gujral doctrine in 2004, this was called as a neighbors first policy. So this policy, what it says is, the international situation of a country, it depends upon what kind of relationship it maintains with the neighboring countries. So for that reason, here we can say, if it is a house or something like that, we can change the neighbors. If we are not happy with the neighbors, or if we have certain disputes with the neighbors, we can shift the house. But when it is when it comes to a state, or when it comes to a country, we cannot shift the geographical location of the country. We have to exist in that particular geographical area. So we have to exist with that particular neighbors. So for that reason, if a country has to live peacefully, if a country has to progress, what is very important is to be in peaceful and friendly relationships with the neighbors. So for that reason, the major shift that has come in the Indian foreign policy is that is the neighbor first policy. And not only that, through this particular policy only, another policy has come into existence, which is called as Act East policy. Act East policy, or else it is also called as Look East policy. This is considered as a very significant policy of India in the post-Cold War era. So this Look East policy, or Act East policy, this was initiated by the then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. So P.V. Narasimha Rao, he visited most of the eastern countries like China, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, and Singapore, and also he has seen that India becomes a very important dialogue partner in ASEAN in 1992. And not only that, India has become a summit level partner of ASEAN in 2002. And not only that, it got involved in some regional initiatives such as BIMSTEC and the Ganga Mekong cooperation, and now it is also becoming the member of East Asian Summit. It has already become the member of East Asian Summit in 2005. Now here in the new trends in the Indian foreign policy, the second trend that we observe in Indian foreign policy is the proactive and the national priority. So before the Cold War, before 1991, we know India has been playing a passive role regarding the international affairs. But during the post Cold War era, we find India playing a proactive and also proactive role, and it is giving importance to the national priority. So how we can say India is playing a proactive role is here we can say the present Prime Minister visiting different countries in the world to develop the friendly and the cordial relationships with those countries, and especially visiting most of the Asian countries. And not only that, we can say India is playing a proactive role because India has developed the nuclear weapon capabilities. So for that reason also we can say India is playing a significant role, an aggressive role in the international politics. And regarding this, we can take the example of the surgical strikes which were taken up, initiated by India against Pakistan. And also India has come forward to develop relationships with Israel. And one more very important example we can take for the proactive role that is played by India is reaching out to the diaspora. Diaspora is the Indian population who are residing in foreign countries. So for all these years, the Indian diaspora, they didn't play much a significant role in the Indian foreign policy. But now here during the recent past, we find the Indian diaspora playing a very important role. Like recently in America, the Indian diaspora has organized a very remarkable event which is called as Howdy Modi, where the significance of India, the strength of India was brought forward to the international media. And here we also can say that it is the Indian diaspora which shows, which has its influence over the elections of the President of America, and even over the economy of America. Now one more, the change that we find in the new trends in Indian foreign policy is integrated views of regions, and the fourth one is multiple relations simultaneously, and the fifth one is de-hyphenation. That is the change that we find in Indian foreign policy nowadays is maintaining a multiple relationships with different countries. Like for instance, before the Cold War, we observed that. So we had a very close relationships with Soviet Russia, but we have distanced ourselves from America. So on the other side, we were in favor of Palestine, but we have distanced our relationships with Israel. But later in the new Indian foreign policy, what we find is India is coming forward for simultaneous multiple relationships with different countries. Like on one side, we are developing a friendly relationship with America, but on the other side, we also are continuing our relationships with continuing our relationships with Russia. On one side, we are sympathetic towards Palestine, but on the other side, we are also maintaining our relationships with Israel. So in this manner, India is coming forward to maintain multilateral relationships simultaneously with different countries in the world. And not only that, India is trying to become a part of different multilateral platforms. Like if you take the example of IPSA dialogue forum. So IPSA, it consists of India, Brazil and South Africa. It is an international tripartite grouping for promoting international cooperation among these countries. So IPSA, this is formed to bring about South-South cooperation, a greater understanding between these three different countries, and also for bringing about a trade agreement between these three countries. And IPSA was signed on 6th June of 2003. But later, there was one more platform which was much broader platform than IPSA, in which India has become a part, which is called as BRICS. So BRICS is a large sized and a dynamic group. It consists of all the members from G20. Like BRICS, it consists of countries like it stands for. It's an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And South Africa. And before South Africa joining into BRICS, then it used to be called as BRIC, BRIC. But later, in 2020, when South Africa has joined into this particular platform, so it has transformed into BRICS. So this is one more platform where India has become a part to have relationships with multiple countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And not only that, India on the other side, it's also maintaining its relationships with United States of America. Now regarding America here, though for all these years America has been in favor of Pakistan, it has been maintaining a friendly relationships with Pakistan. Now in the changed global order, the stand of America has changed. Why? Because now once China has emerged as an economic power, as a competitor to America, so for that reason, America, to maintain this balance of power in the South Asian region, so where China is emerging as a hegemon, so for that reason, to counter this and also to maintain the balance of power in this particular region, so America has shifted its attention to India. So in this particular phenomenon of the relationship between America and India, we also can see that the civil nuclear agreement was signed between India and America, that is in the year 2005 between Manmohan Singh, Indian Prime Minister, and the President of America, George W. Bush. So this is, we can say this is the landmark agreement because it has recognized for the first time India as the nuclear weapon country. So according to this particular agreement, that is civil nuclear agreement, although India is not a part of non-proliferation treaty, though it is not officially a part of non-proliferation treaty, now according to this particular agreement, now India can have trade in nuclear energy because of this civil nuclear agreement. So here we can say Indian foreign policy has been taking a completely different shift in the post-Cold War era. So this is about the basic changes which were brought about in the foreign policy of India, which also can be called as the new foreign policy of India. So here we come to the end of this session where we discussed about the basic features of foreign policy of India, and also the new features of foreign policy of India. So before we sum up the foreign policy of India, so we can say that initially the foreign policy of India was more idealistic. That is, India was giving more importance, or India had an important stand regarding international peace and international settlements, and the concept like peaceful coexistence. But after 1962, after war with China, and also after 1991, we find there is a paradigm shift in Indian foreign policy, and India has been playing a very important, significant and a proactive role. And this is because this shift in Indian foreign policy, this we can say even because of the economic development of the country. So because India has reached the economic stability, Indian economy has been progressing. So for that reason, India is in a position to play a very significant and very active role in the international affairs. So this is about foreign policy and the basic features of the Indian foreign policy.